Thousands of PlayStation 4 and PC players have battled with, and dressed up, the adorable, little jellybean-like characters in the massive multiplayer battle royale game known as Fall Guys, Ultimate Knockout since it debuted on August. Few true crime cases have confounded as much as the disturbing case of Mary Kay Letourneau. Now known as Mary Kay Fualaau, she became notorious nationwide for engaging in a romantic relationship with a 12-year-old student that led to multiple pregnancies, eventual arrest and incarceration. In Fall Guys, up to 60 players frantically maneuver around, under, over, in, on, through, and off of various obstacles to reach the finish line over the course of numerous rounds. The chaotic nature of the title was so compelling it attracted 1.5 million players within 24 hours of launching. The all-out struggle even extended into the real world. Big-name companies and streamers, including G2 Esports, Ninja, and Mr. Beast, duked it out for the chance to bring their own themed skins to the game as part of the Battle of the Brands bidding contest. After her release, Mary Kay married the student, Vili Fualaau, who was 21 years old by the time of her release. The two were together until 2017, when news broke that they were supposedly separating under questionable circumstances. What makes this case equally troubling and fascinating is that despite the undeniable wrongness of Mary Kay's actions, both the victim and the perpetrator have defended their relationship. It's a lot to wrap your head around, so let's dig deep into the details. The combined $1 million donation from the winners went to Special Effect, a physical disabilities charity. Despite its bright color palette and cartoonish design, Fall Guys still contains double entendres and references geared towards an older audience. Here's the untold truth of Mary Kay Letourneau. She was a teacher in a troubled marriage, the daughter of U.S. Congressman John Schmitz. Mary Kay and her siblings were reportedly raised in a conservative Catholic household in California. With 25 different rounds spanning 5 modes, more than 80 costumes, nearly 40 achievements or trophies to earn, and regular updates, there's a lot to take in. Here are a few details in Fall Guys only adult players would pick up on. Playing to the death. Pretty much every aspect of Fall Guys alludes to death in some way. Each round takes place on a flying course that is quite high off the ground. So high, in fact, it's safe to assume any normal person who fell from such a height would die immediately upon impact. According to the crime library, her childhood was filled with trauma. Her brother died when she was 3 years old, and the family later discovered that her father had 2 illegitimate children. If not before. As a college student at Arizona State University, Mary Kay began dating fellow student Stephen Letourneau. When she got pregnant, they reportedly followed the advice of family and got married, despite personal reservations. They moved to Alaska for Steve's work, but were supposedly plagued by relationship woes. But there's one specific example that really drives the final nail into the coffin. At the end of each round, every character appears in their own square space on a vertical platform. The losers then suddenly fall from their spot, presumably to their deaths. This is eerily similar to an ancient sport popularized by Mesoamericans in 300 to 900 CE and given the highly deceptive name, ball game. Given how it was played, a more accurate name for ball game would be sacrifice game, since the captain of the losing team, and sometimes every player, were sacrificed to the gods. Luckily for the losers in Fall Guys, it is assumed that the characters only fall to their deaths. Though they went on to have 4 children, financial problems reportedly put further pressure on an already strained marriage. Ancient art depicts the losers of ball game being decapitated, used as balls, and rolled down flights of stairs. Is that quincunx? At the end of each round, the losers in Fall Guys fall from a vertical platform. When Steve's work took them to Seattle, Mary began taking courses to become an educator, successfully beginning a career teaching 2nd grade in a Seattle suburb in the early 90s. She met her victim in the 2nd grade as a teacher. Mary Kay Letourneau was well received by students and coworkers alike and even praised by her elementary school principal as a gift to the entire Highline School District, according to the crime library. Near the bottom of the screen are pegs onto which the falling Fall Guys, fall. These pegs are positioned in a way that looks similar to quincunx, a board arrangement where balls are dropped down on pegs and bounce their way down to the bottom of the board into various containers. In quincunx, the balls bounce either left or right, while the losers in Fall Guys can also bounce upwards before falling back down.
However, as she gained success professionally, her family life reportedly fell further into disarray. Her husband, Steve Letourneau, was allegedly having affairs with other women, and in response, Mary Kay sought some kind of solace through her work. What she found was a second grader in her class named Vili Fualaau. According to ABC News, the 7-year-old was a gifted artist who reportedly came from a troubled home. His father was behind bars for armed robbery and his mother was busy working long hours at a bakery. Though nothing would occur between the two at the time, they would cross paths again 4 years later, when Mary Kay began teaching 5th and 6th grade, and Fualaau was her student again. She never saw herself as a predator as Mary Kay Letourneau developed a relationship with Vili Fualaau. The closeness between teacher and student became increasingly disturbing to colleagues, neighbors, and family, who noticed them spending an increasing amount of time together and engaging in intimate behavior, such as slow dancing. In the summer after 6th grade, Letourneau reportedly began raping Fualaau, but according to New York Magazine, she seemed to view their relationship as one between equals. He dominated me in the most masculine way that any man, any leader, could do, she said. But that's neither here nor there. Keep in mind, he was 12 and she was 34 years old at the time. Letourneau claimed the illegality of the relationship never crossed her mind. What is here or there is that when the quincunx pegs are positioned in a way that will provide an equal chance for the balls to bounce left or right, then the balls will always fall into bell-shaped curve formation. Even though Fall Guys doesn't show the bottom of this supposed quincunx, it's interesting that it could very well be one. Where are the Fall Gals? The gaming industry, and, to be fair, every industry, needs to ensure women receive equal treatment and representation, so when there's a title like Fall Guys, red flags might go up. Of course, the name is catchy and apt, seeing as there is a lot of falling that goes on in the game. You could also argue it's better than the original title, Fool's Gauntlet. But there are so many words in the English language that could have been used to give the game a more neutral title. Additionally, upon closer inspection of the original Fall Guys roster, you might notice the absence of actual female characters. Her primary concern was if Fualaau's mother would be angry. I definitely knew that it was bizarre, Letourneau said in an interview with Barbara Walters. I didn't know that getting into a relationship, a sexually intimate relationship, I didn't know that was a felony or a crime. Sure, you could argue the characters are androgynous, but Fall Guys features various male character costumes from other games, such as Gordon Freeman from Half-Life. I knew it wasn't right. There don't appear to be any female crossover costumes in Season 1. That said, it looks like more feminine costumes will arrive with Season 2, including a green-haired witch with a cute skull embroidered on her pointy hat and a Viking warrior maiden, complete with a horned helmet. It's also important to note the game designers put a great amount of effort into how the characters would look from the get-go, a design that went through many changes until finally becoming the adorable little bean-like figures they are today. The physics checks out. Characters in Fall Guys must traverse many types of stationary and moving obstacles, and the ways in which players can interact with and be affected by these obstacles are seemingly endless. In other words, there is a lot of physics involved. I mean, Vili and I loved each other. And still do. Her husband's family turned her in when Mary Kay Letourneau became pregnant with Vili Fualaau's child. She reportedly planned to deceive her husband, Stephen Letourneau, into thinking the child was his own, but the terrible truth of her affair soon became evident as suspicions became too serious to ignore. The host of the Action Lab channel on YouTube thought so, too, and wanted to check the accuracy of the physics personally and recorded himself testing certain stunts that happen in the game. Steve eventually discovered concrete evidence in the form of love letters that his wife had written to her student stashed away in their family home. Steve's cousin reportedly called Child Protective Services to report Mary Kay's abuse. Specifically, he was curious about what actually happens when you move with a walkway and jump off, move against a walkway and jump off, stand on a spinning obstacle and jump off, and, of course, fall. When testing both walkway stunts, the host uses a treadmill marked with red tape for reference. She was arrested during a teachers' meeting in March 1997, on a charge of statutory rape.
My reaction, I think, is disbelief, Steve told a local news station at the time of his wife's arrest. Just denial. Steve took custody of their 4 children and moved back to Alaska. She was a wife, loving wife, good person, he said in an interview. But does a good mom do what she did? Does a good teacher do what she did? Does a good wife do what she did? No. Her initial sentence was only 3 months. Mary Kay Letourneau gave birth to her first child by Vili Fualaau in May 1997 while out on bail. Meanwhile, He tests the spinning walkway stunt on a roundabout at a playground with a kid in the background looking confused, and the fall stunt at an indoor skydiving facility. Her initial sentence for her crime was extraordinarily lenient. She pleaded guilty to second-degree child rape and received a suspended prison sentence provided she adhered to a number of court orders set by King County Superior Court Judge Linda Lau, including avoiding contact with Fualaau. At the time, Letourneau tearfully apologized to the court for her actions. But shortly after her release from prison, Letourneau was arrested again after being caught having sex with Fualaau in her car. Judge Lau then sentenced Letourneau to 7.5 years in prison, the maximum penalty available. And, yes, the physics check out for each stunt, though, it sounds like he only gave the fall mechanics a passing grade. You can score after successful bouts of chasing tail. Many of the rounds in Fall Guys are incredibly fun and creative, but a select few are a bit, well, steamy. Take, for example, tail tag. The name sounds harmless enough, but the point is to go after players who have what look like raccoon tails and grab them. The players who still have a tail when the timer goes off win. So, in other words, you are literally chasing tail. These violations are extraordinarily egregious and profoundly disturbing, said Lau at the sentencing, adding that Letourneau's initial sentencing was an opportunity that you foolishly squandered. She wrote a book with Vili. Impregnated by Vili Fualaau a second time during her weeks of freedom, Mary Kay Letourneau gave birth while incarcerated. Those who are familiar with the idiom, chasing tail, will make this connection immediately. For those innocent enough to have never heard this euphemism before, the most kid-friendly translation involves a man pursuing women. It's pretty clear what pursuing means in this context. Both of those children were raised by Fualaau's mother. The fact that players must not only chase other players with tails but physically grab these tails makes this image even more intense. Speaking of intense, there's a team version of this round that involves groups chasing tail together. Steve Letourneau divorced Mary Kay and received custody of their 4 children. In 1999, Mary Kay was placed in solitary confinement after attempting to contact Fualaau by writing letters to him. Wow. Congrats, you're a bully. As if being crowned champion and having bragging rights weren't enough, Fall Guys further incentivizes players to compete for the championship by rewarding them with trophies and achievements upon the completion of particular tasks. One such achievement is unlocked when a player knocks another over. While behind bars, she also managed to co-author a book with Fualaau, Untold Crime, L'Amour, which to this date has only been published in France. On its own, this does not seem extreme at all, especially in the gaming world where there are far worse things that characters can do to each other. But the actual achievement is called Big Bully. In other words, you can unlock an achievement for not only exhibiting bullish behavior, but for actually being what the game refers to as a bully, and not just any bully, but a big bully. This might seem harmless to most. But adults understand that bullying is a particularly troubling form of aggressive behavior that can lead to some horrific outcomes, including mental health disorders, substance abuse and suicide. The fact that Fall Guys rewards players for this behavior raises some questions. Fall Ball resembles a real-life game that used giant balls. The whimsical nature of rounds like Fall Ball, which involves teams working together to score on the opposing goal with giant soccer balls, might seem like yet another example of an over-the-top competition that never took place in the real world, but that's not true. Most American publishers were looking at this as an icky story, said Bob Huff, a lawyer for Letourneau who facilitated her connection with the French publisher, but the French saw it as a love story. The highly controversial tome supposedly aimed to defend the illegal, illicit relationship on the grounds of true love, but the result was a disturbing combination of Mary Kay's romantic musings and Fualaau's graphic contributions. Her idea of the book was this romantic valentine to the love of her life, noted true crime author Greg Olson, author of a book about the case, and he's just talking about boinking the teacher. Vili and his mother sued the school and the city. Vili Fualaau and his mother, Suna Vili, sued the school district that employed Mary Kay Letourneau, as well as the city of Des Moines, Iowa in 2002, reported the Seattle Post-Intelligencer. Incredibly, a man by the name of Moses G. Crane thought games like football were, to the average person without a college education. According to Fualaau's lawyer, both the school and the city had evidence suggesting there was an inappropriate relationship between Fualaau and Letourneau, yet neither entity took action. Incomprehensible, dull, cruel, and came up with a game called Pushball in the second half of the 19th century that is, arguably, much similar. Basically, Pushball used a ball that had to be so massive that a player on one side could not see who was on the other. The first public game of Pushball took place in 1902 and featured a ball constructed from so many horse hides that the sheer size of it took nearly 3 hours to fully inflate using a pump with special modifications. For anyone who wants to make a similarly sized ball using the same materials, you will need 9 horse hides. Fualaau's complaint against the city stemmed from an incident in which Des Moines police officers found him in a parked van with Letourneau. Though, maybe you should stick to Fall Guys instead. The theme song from the Fall Guys launch trailer may sound familiar. The official Fall Guys launch trailer tells the inspiring story of an underdog who begins his career stumbling and falling more so than winning, while a more experienced and better dressed character taunts him relentlessly. His complaint against the school was related to several incidents in which he and Letourneau were caught in intimate moments, including when a janitor caught them in a darkened faculty restroom, the Seattle paper reported. During all of this, an old-timey song with lyrics such as, "Hot Diggity," and, "Dog Ziggity Boom," plays in the background. Fualaau and Vili sought $1 million from the school district and the city. According to a subsequent report in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, jurors in the civil case sided with the school and the city, noting that police didn't see any illegal sexual activity at the time and that Fualaau's mother even allowed him to go home with Letourneau following the incident. "We never had any responsibility for what happened," said Jerry Fain, assistant superintendent of the Highline School District. Adults will know immediately that the soundtrack comes from the hit 1940s song, "Hot Diggity," by Perry Como, an individual Bing Crosby reportedly dubbed, "the man who invented casual." The song choice might not make sense at first, seeing as it's obviously a love song. But as the trailer continues playing, it becomes apparent that the character in the movie is in love with the need to compete, and to win. From Donkey Kong to cannons in this case, Donkey Kong does not refer to the Donkey Kong Country series that thrust the titular character into the limelight, but the 1981 arcade game where the giant gorilla actually made his debut as a villain. If that isn't strange enough, his arch-nemesis is a character called Jumpman who would later have a name that you might have heard of before, Mario. The problem? Donkey Kong has captured Jumpman's girlfriend. To get her back, Jumpman must ascend various construction sites to the top where the then evil gorilla waits. I do know that Fualaau has issues he has to deal with, and I hope he gets all the help he needs. Vili married Mary Kay within hours of Mary Kay Letourneau's release from prison in 2004. Vili Fualaau, then 21, was working with the courts to rescind a no-contact order between him and his former educator, who was 42 years old at the time. Though he expressed emphatically in his motion that he did not fear or feel forcible compulsion from Letourneau, many in the press found the continuation of the formerly illicit relationship to be disturbing. But in this case, waiting means throwing various objects, such as fireballs and barrels. What does this have to do with Fall Guys? A round called Fall Mountain is quite similar to the entire premise of Donkey Kong. And, no, there isn't an evil gorilla who will later have a change of heart but is now throwing random objects down a construction site to prevent a soon-to-be famous character from reaching the top. Author Greg Olson said their reunion spoke volumes about Letourneau's pathology. In Fall Mountain, there are a bunch of characters who are racing up a mountain while cannons fire random objects from above. She has a personal need to get back together with him to prove to the world this is a love story and not a crime story, he said. Their marriage sparked a tabloid frenzy. News of Letourneau and Fualaau's impending marriage sparked a tabloid media blitz, and Entertainment Tonight paid big money for exclusive footage of their wedding. The 2005 nuptials, held at a winery in Washington in front of an audience of about 250, were attended by 2 of Mary's children from her first marriage. According to an interview with Barbara Walters, Letourneau said that apart from the Entertainment Tonight presence at the ceremony, media wasn't privy to the location. "We were trying to protect our guests." Blending her 2 families was difficult. According to a source for Radar Online, Mary Kay Letourneau's 4 children with ex-husband Steve Letourneau tried to give her a chance to rebuild a relationship with them, after she was released from prison a second time. 2 of them even moved to Seattle to try to get to know her and to try to understand her new life. An anonymous insider claimed, "They were very positive about their new relationship with her at first, but as time went on their feelings changed." Likely making things difficult was the fact that Vili Fualaau was just a year and a half older than Mary Kay's eldest son. And rather than saving a girlfriend, the characters are competing for a crown. The Blob continues to influence pop culture as the creators of Fall Guys revealed. Fall Guys was based on ridiculous game shows such as Takeshi's Castle and Total Wipeout. Like all ludicrous game shows, there is usually some sort of slime involved, whether it falls on you, you fall in it, or a combination of the two. Fall Guys is no exception. But one of the many rounds that incorporates slime adds another ingredient to this already slimy image. Slime Climb, which involves outrunning rising slime to the finish line, plays upon a popular theme in film where people run away from slime-like creatures. It's an awkward feeling, for sure, to be close in age with someone technically your stepson or stepdaughter, Fualaau said. Probably the best example of this is the 1950s movie, The Blob, which revolves around an alien entity that looks like, well, a blob that devours and dissolves its prey. Even though there's nothing to suggest that the slime in Fall Guys possesses any form of intelligent life, it's hard for anyone familiar with the Blob to not think of the rising slime as an angry alien. Are they on good terms with him now? I don't know if it's good or bad, he said. They did their own thing, and I did mine. It really got too personal. Her husband filed for separation, but it might not be why you think. The couple made waves and generated new controversy in spring 2017 when news broke that Vili Fualaau was separating from Mary Kay Letourneau, adding a new wrinkle to a perplexing case that has fascinated the press for decades. While initial reports did not elaborate on the reason for the split, rumor had it the separation was not as it appeared on the surface. Instead of a dwindling romance, some reports suggested the separation was a form of legal subterfuge initiated so that Fualaau could pursue a marijuana business, which is legal in Washington, his state of residence. It's not necessarily what you think, Fualaau said. Everything is fine between us. But what seemed at first to be a clear-cut clarification soon turned dubious, with Fualaau's lawyers refuting the report, and Letourneau's lawyers filing a petition to have Fualaau's separation case dismissed. What the future holds is anybody's guess. The best that we can hope for is that everyone involved ends up with the outcome they deserve.